I thought she was just busy with work, until I opened the hotel room door and saw her with him. That moment changed everything, and I haven't been the same since. My name's Jake and I've been married to my wife, Megan, for just shy of 10 years. We met through a circle of mutual friends, and from the first moment we talked, there was this undeniable connection. One of those rare moments where you think, yep, I found my person. Megan's brilliant, sharp-witted, and has this way of lighting up any room she steps into. She's a corporate attorney, always calm under fire, and I've always admired how she could juggle chaos like it was second nature. For the longest time I believed we were solid. Like any couple, we had our moments, but nothing earth-shattering. Over the past few years we started doing these separate getaways. It wasn't really planned, more like something we just slid into. Megan would head out for girls' weekends or the occasional work retreat, and I'd take off on my own for some hiking and quiet. We convinced ourselves it was good for us, time apart to reset, to miss each other. At least that's what we told ourselves. But over the past few months things started to shift. Subtly at first. Megan began coming home later than usual, blaming late nights at the office. She'd be glued to her phone more, texting during dinner or stepping away to take calls. That wasn't really new, she's always valued her privacy, but now she kept her phone close like it was a lifeline. If I walked into a room she'd suddenly lock it or flip it over. And little things that used to make her laugh started to annoy her. It was like I'd turned into an irritation instead of a partner. We weren't arguing more, not exactly. But there was this quiet distance settling between us. And the worst part? I couldn't figure out when it started or why. I kept chalking it up to her workload. She's always had deadlines and heavy responsibilities. But somewhere inside, a part of me knew there was something else going on. That uneasy feeling just wouldn't let go. I tried to ignore it, tried to push it aside and tell myself I was just imagining things. But that gut instinct? It was persistent, gnawing at me even when I smiled and pretended everything was okay. Then came the weekend that changed everything. About 2 months ago, Megan mentioned she was thinking about another girls' weekend. Nothing unusual, she'd done it plenty of times before, but this time the way she said it felt off. Too casual. Like she was trying to gauge my reaction. "Hey babe, thinking about taking a weekend with the girls again. That cool with you?" she asked like it was no big deal. Normally I wouldn't have thought twice. But something about it made me pause. I couldn't stop thinking about her secretive phone habits, the late nights, the sudden mood shifts. She didn't sound like the Megan I used to know. "Where to this time?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She didn't skip a beat. "The cabin, you remember, the one we stayed at last year." But here's the thing. Megan and I hadn't been to any cabin last year. We hadn't taken a trip together in a long time. I opened my mouth to say something, to point it out, but for some reason I let it go. "Sounds nice," I said, even though every part of me felt uneasy. She gave me a smile, but it was different, forced. Her eyes didn't light up the way they used to. That Friday she packed up, kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong and walked out the door. But nothing about it felt right. After she left, I just sat there, staring at the front door long after it shut, this heaviness growing in my chest. I tried to stay busy, caught a couple of movies, went to the gym, even grabbed drinks with some buddies. But the whole weekend I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time I checked my phone, I wondered what she was doing. Was she really with her friends? Or was there something else? By Sunday night, when she was supposed to be on her way home, I couldn't take it anymore. I'd never been the snooping type, but I gave in. I checked her social media. Megan's always been careful, not one to post much. But one of her friends, someone she said she was with, had uploaded photos from the weekend. Pictures of her out on the town, hitting rooftop bars, laughing with people. She was clearly nowhere near a cabin. My stomach dropped. If Megan wasn't with her, then where was she? And who was she with? I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. That never happened. Megan always answered, or at the very least, shot me a quick text. I stared at the screen, debating whether to message again. Maybe her battery had died? Maybe the cabin had no reception? But then I remembered, we'd stayed in a cabin before and we had full service the entire time. That night I didn't sleep. I kept playing out every possible scenario in my head, each one worse than the last. I kept telling myself she'd come home Monday morning with a perfectly reasonable story, and I'd feel ridiculous for even doubting her. But in my heart I knew better. When I woke up the next morning, there was still nothing from her. Not a call. Not a text. Just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in hand, heart pounding in my throat, hoping for some sign she was okay, or at least that she was thinking of me. By midday I couldn't take it anymore. I dialed her number again. This time it rang once, then the line went dead. That's when my stomach twisted into a knot. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. In a bit of a panic, I remembered something we hadn't touched in years: our old location sharing app. Back when we used to hike together, we had synced our phones just in case one of us got turned around. I hadn't thought about it in forever, but now I opened it up, hands trembling. And sure enough, Megan's location was turned off. That's when the truth started sinking in. Not just suspicion, certainty. She wasn't just busy. She was keeping things from me. Hiding. The woman I had shared my life with for nearly a decade was actively choosing to shut me out. Around 5 in the evening, Megan finally came walking through the door. She looked polished and fresh, not like someone who had just spent 3 days hiking or sleeping in a rustic cabin. "Hey babe," she said with a cheery tone, setting her bag down by the door. "Miss me?" I forced a smile and tried to keep my voice even. "Yeah, how was the weekend?" She kicked off her shoes and gave a shrug. "It was nice. Just what I needed. We stayed up talking, took it easy. The cabin was super cozy." I stood there watching her, listening to this practiced version of the weekend she wanted me to believe. And I couldn't understand how it came so easy to her, how someone I loved so deeply could lie to my face like that. I wanted to challenge it right then and there, to ask her why she thought she could fool me. But the words wouldn't come. So I just nodded, feeling like a stranger in my own home. "Sounds nice," I murmured, even though nothing about it felt right. That night, I made a decision. I needed the truth, no matter how much it tore me apart. At dinner, I found it hard to even meet her eyes. Megan acted like everything was back to normal, asking about my weekend, making light conversation. I answered, but my mind was somewhere else. I was watching her closely, waiting for the next inconsistency to show itself. And sure enough, it didn't take long. Halfway through the meal, she started recounting her weekend again, this time mentioning a hike they supposedly took. "We found this incredible lookout on Saturday," she said, nudging her food around. "You'd have loved the view, just stunning." I nodded slowly. Something about the way she said it felt too polished. Like a scene she had rehearsed. My instincts kicked in again. "What was the trail called?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She paused just for a second, barely, but I caught it. "Oh, I don't remember. One of the girls led us. I just followed along." There it was. A crack in the story. She hadn't expected me to probe. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Later that evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked. And I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop myself. I picked it up with shaky hands, scrolling through her messages. Most of it looked normal: work chatter, group texts with her girlfriends. But then I saw it. A thread from someone named Ben. I tapped on it, my pulse thudding in my ears. There weren't many texts, just a short string, but one message stood out like a spotlight in the dark. "I had a great time this weekend. Can't wait to see you again." My entire body froze. I scrolled up, desperate for more context, but the rest had been wiped clean. She had deleted everything, except that last message. My heart dropped. She hadn't just lied, she had spent the weekend with someone else. Not friends. Not at a cabin. With Ben. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, my thoughts spiraling. The betrayal stung so deeply I could barely breathe. Megan walked back into the room a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, chatting like nothing was wrong. I just stared at her, stunned into silence. I didn't say anything that night. I needed more. I wasn't ready to blow up my life over a vague text, even though every part of me already knew the truth. But after that night, everything between us shifted. I watched her more carefully, noticed every strange reaction, every time she glanced at her phone a little too quickly. I couldn't stop picturing her with this man, this Ben, and wondering how long it had been going on. Then came the breaking point. We were watching TV a few nights later, barely speaking, when her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't ignore it. She jumped up off the couch, grabbed it quickly like it was something urgent. Her body language changed instantly. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Who was that?" I asked, trying my best to sound calm, but my voice cracked slightly at the end. She hesitated just a beat too long. "Just work," she replied, eyes still glued to the screen. "I've got a client meeting early tomorrow. Just reviewing some things." Something inside me snapped. I couldn't bottle it up any longer. "Megan, what's going on? Who is Ben?" She froze. The room went still, like all the air had been sucked out of it. I caught a flicker of panic on her face before she quickly masked it with a smile that felt far too deliberate. "Ben?" she said too smoothly. "You mean Ben from work? He's one of my colleagues." "Don't lie to me," I said sharply, rising to my feet. "I saw the message. I know you weren't up at any cabin with your friends. Who were you really with, Megan? Her jaw tensed, but she didn't lose her composure. Not yet. I honestly don't know what kind of wild ideas you've got brewing, she replied, crossing her arms. But you're way off. Ben and I have worked together for years. He was there, so was everyone else. It was a team-building retreat. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Then why did he text you saying he had a great time this weekend? And don't pretend you were on some nature trail. You didn't even know the name of it. Were you even hiking, or were you just with him the whole time? That hit something. Her face faltered just for a second before she caught herself again. I can't believe you're accusing me like this, she said, her voice sharpening. Yes, we went hiking. Yes, Ben was there. Along with 5 other people. It was work-related. You're letting your imagination run wild. She sounded polished, too polished. Her tone, her posture, it all felt practiced. And I remembered, she's a lawyer. She deals with pressure for a living. Spinning a story was second nature. If it was all above board, why didn't you just say so from the start? I asked. Why lie and say it was a girls' weekend? And why were the messages deleted, Megan? She looked away then just for a moment. Bit her lip. Thinking. I didn't want this exact situation, she said coldly. I knew you'd get jealous. I didn't want to start a fight. And the messages? They were about confidential work stuff. You know I can't share that. I'm not hiding anything, Jake. You're making this into something it's not. Her words were calm, rational, and I could feel my certainty start to slip for just a second. But deep down I knew better. Something was off. Something was still very wrong. Then she stepped toward me, voice softening. Jake, I love you. I know I've been distant lately and I'm sorry. But you've got to trust me, okay? This isn't what you think. I nodded slowly, not because I believed her but because I realized something in that moment. If I wanted the truth, I had to be careful. I had to be smarter. The days that followed were tense. Megan acted like nothing had happened, like our conversation hadn't cracked the foundation of everything we'd built. I played along, but inside my thoughts were racing. Her explanation about the retreat didn't sit right, and the name Ben was carved into my mind like a warning I couldn't ignore. Then a few nights later the final straw came. Megan left for what she said was a work dinner. She looked flawless, sleek black dress, flawless makeup, her hair done in that effortless way she always wore for important events. She smiled before walking out the door like it was any other evening. As soon as she was gone, I sat down with my laptop. Years ago we'd shared the same email for convenience, trip planning, financial stuff. I hadn't checked it in ages. But something told me to look. Most of it was what I expected. Legal updates, client correspondence, professional back and forth. But buried among the routine, I saw an email that stopped my heart cold. It was from Ben. Sent a week before that so-called retreat. Subject line, can't wait for this weekend, winking face. I opened it with shaking hands. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. But it told me everything I needed to know. I've been thinking about you all week. Just us, finally. No more hiding. I'll bring the wine, you bring that smile. See you Friday, gorgeous. That's what the email said. I just stared at it, my hands frozen on the keyboard. My whole body felt numb, like the floor had been ripped out from under me. That one short message said everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something I could chalk up to poor communication or stress. Megan had been lying to my face, and the truth hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My head swirled with questions and disbelief. How long had this been going on behind my back? Was it just Ben, or was he just the one who got caught? I felt physically sick, like the betrayal had settled deep in my chest and taken root. And then, at the bottom of the message, I noticed something else, an attachment. My heart thudded as I clicked on it. It was a picture. The two of them, sitting out on a balcony somewhere. She was laughing, really laughing, her head tilted back, a wine glass in hand, her eyes glowing in the way they hadn't around me in a long time. Ben was beside her, smiling like he had won something that didn't belong to him. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I closed the laptop before she got home, but I couldn't unsee what I saw. It burned into my brain like a scar. That night, Megan walked through the door, still wearing that polished, confident smile. She set her bag down casually like it was just another day. Dinner went long, she said with a small grin. Sorry I'm late. I nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't trust myself to speak. Everything okay? She asked, pausing just long enough to glance at me. Yeah. Just tired, I lied. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, and I had to fight the urge to flinch. That kiss used to mean something. Now it felt cold. Performed. Like she was covering up the guilt with routine. But I didn't confront her, not that night. I needed more. More than a few lines of text and a smiling picture. I wanted the truth laid bare. I needed her to admit it, to show me she was still human beneath all those polished lies. So for the next few days I quietly collected what I could. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, watched her emails, retraced her messages. Every time I found something new, another flirtatious message, another photo of them together, it cut deeper. And with each discovery, I grew more sure of two things. She'd been with him for a long time, and she had no intention of telling me. But even with the evidence piling up, I held my tongue. Some small part of me still wanted her to look me in the eyes and tell the truth. To own up to what she had done. That moment never came. A few days later, I decided to test her, one final push to see if she'd crack. It was a quiet Friday evening, and we were eating dinner like everything was normal. "Hey Meg," I said casually, looking up from my plate. "What do you think about getting away this weekend? Just the two of us. Maybe head up to the lake, get some air, spend some time together." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked down toward her phone, lying face down on the table like it always was. "This weekend?" she repeated, like the idea surprised her. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound easygoing. "We haven't had real time together in months." She hesitated. "I've got a lot of work to catch up on. There's a big meeting Monday. I really can't afford to be away right now." Same excuse. Over and over. I bit down the frustration. "Come on," I said gently. "You've been saying that every week. Just a couple of days. We could really use the time." Her whole demeanor shifted. Her jaw tightened and that guarded look returned. "Jake," I said, "no. I have responsibilities. I'm sorry I don't have the luxury to just drop everything." I leaned back in my chair, watching her closely. "Is that really the reason?" I asked, voice lower now. "Because it feels like there's something else going on here." She looked up, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means we haven't been right for a while," I said. "You're always busy, always too tired, and the second I asked to spend time together, you shut down. Something's not adding up." Her eyes narrowed like I'd just accused her of something unspeakable. "I don't know what you think you're implying," she said coldly, "but I've been working myself to the bone. You know how important this case is." "That's not what I'm talking about," I snapped, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I'm talking about how you're never really here, Megan. Even when you're sitting across from me, you're somewhere else. So why won't you spend time with me? What's actually going on?" She exhaled loudly, pressing her fingers to her temples like I was the one being unreasonable. "Jake, this is ridiculous. I've told you over and over, work is chaos right now. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But I wasn't backing down. "Not this time." "Is it nothing?" I fired back. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you've been running away from me. Avoiding every moment together. And I don't buy the whole work is crazy thing anymore." Her jaw clenched, and she slammed her fork down on the table with a metallic clink that echoed through the kitchen. "So what? You think I'm cheating on you? That's what this is, right? You don't trust me at all." I stood up slowly, hands shaking, heart pounding. "What else am I supposed to think, Megan? You're always hiding your phone, disappearing on weekends, dodging every effort I make to connect. And you won't even spend 2 days away with me." Something in her face shifted, just for a moment. A flicker of fear, maybe, or guilt. But just as fast, she covered it up with defiance. She crossed her arms like she was defending herself in court. "This is crazy," she said flatly. "You're acting paranoid." "I saw the messages," I said, my voice low but steady now. "The ones from Ben." There it was. A long pause followed, the kind that pulls the air out of the room. Her eyes widened just a little before narrowing again, trying to recalculate. "What messages?" she asked too smoothly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Don't lie to me. I saw the text. I saw the picture of you two on that balcony, drinking wine, laughing. I know exactly where you were." She stood there, frozen. And then, like flipping a switch, she leaned into anger. "You went through my phone? Jake, how dare you? That's a complete invasion of privacy. I can't believe." "Enough," I shouted. "Don't turn this around on me. I'm not the one sneaking around behind your back. I'm not the one deleting messages and spinning lies. If you have nothing to hide, why not just tell the truth?" For a long, tense moment, she just stared at me. Then she turned away, fingers tangled in her hair, pacing the kitchen. "I can't do this right now," she mumbled. "I have too much going on. I can't have this conversation." My voice was quiet now, but the words carried everything I'd been holding in. "It's never the right time, is it?" And with that, I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. The city lights blurred as I passed intersections I barely registered, thoughts spinning too fast to catch. Eventually, I pulled into a small bar I didn't recognize, tucked away on a quieter street. I needed to breathe to be away from the weight pressing down on me at home. Inside, it was dim and quiet, just a few folks nursing drinks or making quiet conversation. I found a stool at the end of the bar and ordered a beer. For the first time that night, I let myself not think about Megan, about Ben, about the lies. Just for a few minutes. That's when I noticed her. A woman sitting a couple stools down, blonde, mid-30s maybe, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and caught my eye, offered a polite smile. I nodded back just out of instinct. "Long day?" she asked gently, her voice easy. I gave a tired laugh. Something like that. She moved a little closer on her stool, clearly open to talking. "You've got that look, like your mind's working overtime." I shrugged. "Yeah. Just relationship stuff. Nothing simple about it." She nodded knowingly. "Is it ever?" We talked for a while. Nothing serious. Weather, her new job, how she was still getting used to town. She didn't pry. She didn't ask for more than I wanted to share. And for a few minutes I appreciated the distraction. But I didn't notice that someone else had been watching. In the far corner of the bar, mostly hidden behind a tall potted plant, sat Melanie, one of Megan's friends. I hadn't seen her. Didn't even know she was there. But she saw me. And as I sat there, talking with the blonde woman, Melanie raised her phone and quietly snapped a photo. No hesitation, no second thought. Within seconds she had texted it to Megan. One more spark tossed onto an already burning pile of lies and anger. I finished my drink, thanked the woman for the brief conversation, and headed out. I hadn't been looking for anything more than a moment to clear my head, and that's all it had been. But the calm I'd found at the bar? It was already fading as I pulled back into our driveway. I knew what was waiting for me inside, and I was ready for it. As soon as I stepped through the door, there she was. Megan stood in the hallway, phone gripped tight in her hand, anger radiating off her like heat. She didn't say a word at first, just held up her screen showing me the photo. The one Melanie had taken. Me at the bar. Sitting next to a blonde woman I didn't even know. "What the hell is this, Jake?" she shouted, holding the phone inches from my face. "You storm out and the next thing I hear you're at a bar flirting with some woman? Is that what we are now? A joke?" My hands curled into fists at my sides. The hypocrisy stung more than I expected. "You're seriously coming at me about this?" I said, keeping my voice steady but laced with fury. "After everything you've done?" Her mouth opened, ready to fire back, but I didn't let her. "Don't," I warned. "Don't even try to act like you're the victim here." "I haven't done anything," she insisted, but her voice cracked just enough to betray her. "Cut the act," I said sharply. "I know about Ben. I know you've been seeing him. The texts, the photos, the hotel emails. You've been lying to me for months and now you're upset because I had a drink next to a stranger?" Her eyes widened. She tried to cover it, to snap back into control, but she couldn't hide the panic flashing across her face. "What messages?" she asked, still clinging to her script. "You really want to do this?" I said, taking a step closer. "You want to keep pretending? I've seen the emails. The photo of you and Ben on the balcony. The way you smile with him like you don't even have a husband. Don't stand here and talk to me about loyalty." She stumbled, her confidence faltering. "Jake, you went through my phone? My email? That's what people do when they're being lied to," I said, cutting her off. "When they're desperate for the truth. I didn't want to go digging. But you gave me no choice." She stood silent then, her arms hanging loosely by her sides, phone still clutched like a lifeline. The mask was breaking and underneath it she looked lost. "You've destroyed this," I said, quieter now. "Whatever trust we had, it's gone." She didn't try to argue. She didn't cry. She just stood there frozen. And in that moment, I realized there was nothing left to say. The weekend passed like a bad dream on repeat. Megan hardly spoke. Her phone buzzed constantly, and every time it did, she turned it over or walked into another room. She still tried to keep up appearances, clicking on her laptop talking about work, but I wasn't fooled. I knew she was waiting for the right moment to slip away again. And like clockwork it came. Saturday afternoon she told me she had to run into the office, last-minute client prep. Same excuse, different day. She didn't even look nervous anymore. Just tired. She gave me that tired little smile, grabbed her bag and headed out. But this time I followed. My hands were cold on the steering wheel as I stayed a few cars behind her, my stomach knotted with dread. I wasn't even surprised when she bypassed the law office completely and drove across town, straight to the hotel I had seen mentioned in one of Ben's emails. She parked and walked in like she belonged there. I waited a few minutes before I got out of the car. My heart was pounding in my ears as I entered the lobby and watched the elevator close behind her. I didn't rush. I knew where she was headed. I waited a few minutes, then took the stairs to the third floor. The hallway was quiet. Every step I took felt heavier than the last. And then I found the door. I didn't knock. I pushed it open and stepped inside. There they were. Ben and Megan. In bed. The world didn't go silent. It got louder. My pulse roared in my ears, my vision blurred, and all I could feel was the sudden, crushing pressure of reality collapsing around me. Megan gasped, scrambling to pull the sheets over herself. Her eyes were wide, her mouth trembling. Ben sat up, panicked, saying nothing, just frozen like a man caught stealing something he knew didn't belong to him. And I didn't wait for them to explain. "This is your job, Megan?" I said, my voice shaking as fury spilled out. "This is what you've been protecting all weekend? This is what was more important than your marriage?" She sat there frozen. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. She didn't need to say a word. Everything was already out in the open. "You couldn't even face me," I continued louder now. "You didn't have the decency to be honest. Instead, you're here in bed with him," I spat, motioning toward Ben, who still hadn't moved or spoken. This is who you threw it all away for." Megan finally found her voice, but it came out in a panicked rush. "Jake, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It wasn't supposed to happen." I didn't let her finish. "Don't," I said, the disgust twisting in my chest. "Just stop. I've heard enough. You had every chance to tell the truth, but you chose to keep lying. And now you want to say it wasn't what it looked like." She tried to reach for me, scrambling out of the sheets, but I backed away like her touch burned. "No, don't. Don't try to fix this now." Tears welled up in her eyes, and I felt nothing but exhaustion. I looked down at her, this woman I had loved for so long, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. "You don't need to come home," I said quietly. "I'll send your stuff. I'm done." Ben, finally finding his voice, muttered, "Man, I didn't know." I turned on him, my glare like ice. "You knew. Don't pretend you didn't. You both knew exactly what you were doing." Then I looked back at Megan, lowering my voice but cutting through her like a knife. "You made your choice. This is your reality now." And with that, I turned and walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me. When I stepped into the hallway, it felt like I'd crossed into a different life. The hallway, the elevator, even the air outside, it all felt quieter, like the storm was behind me. In the days that followed, the rage began to fade, replaced by something heavier. Grief. But not for her, for the version of us that never really existed. The house was quiet without her, but oddly enough, it felt lighter. I didn't realize how much weight I'd been carrying until it was gone. That blonde woman from the bar, Claire, she'd stuck in my mind not because she flirted or gave me attention, but because for a few minutes she reminded me I was still alive, still capable of connection. So I texted her. Just a simple, honest message. "Thanks for the talk the other night. You up for that drink sometime?" To my surprise, she said yes. That evening, I cleaned up a bit, opened a bottle of wine, and for the first time in a while, I felt something close to hope. Claire showed up around 8, casual but put together, her smile warm as ever. "Hey," she said. "Good to see you again." We talked, laughed, shared stories that had nothing to do with heartbreak. And I let myself lean into the quiet, easy piece of it all. But then came the knock. Loud. Urgent. I already knew who it was. I opened the door and found Megan standing there, disheveled, red-eyed, completely unraveled. Her mascara streaked, her voice trembling. "Jake, please. I need to talk to you." I didn't say anything at first. Just looked at her, tired down to the bone. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I wasn't thinking straight. I was confused. But it's you. It's always been you. I'll do anything to fix this. Please." Her voice cracked, thick with desperation. But the damage was done. Before I could respond, Claire appeared behind me, holding her glass, her expression curious but kind. She didn't say a word, just smiled slightly and stepped back. That was all it took. Megan's face crumbled. She looked between us, realizing exactly what she'd walked into. "You already moved on?" she said, her voice barely more than a breath. I nodded slowly. "You moved on first, Megan. I'm just following your lead." She looked gutted. Her hand covered her mouth as she staggered back a step. "I'm sorry," she said, tears falling freely now. "I didn't want this." I didn't mean to lose you. I sighed, not in anger, but in acceptance. You didn't lose me, Megan. You gave me away. She didn't fight back. She just stood there, breaking apart in silence. Then she turned and walked down the driveway, crying softly into the night. I stood there a while, watching the last shadow of us fade away. Then I closed the door. Claire looked at me gently. You okay? And for the first time in a long time, I answered without hesitation. Yeah, I think I am.